between land and sea,
between sleep and waking,
between dreams and reality,
between wealth and poverty,
between the city and the country,
between hope and despair.
Writing on air from East Leeds FM.
And welcome to the audience that we've got in the fabulous radio theatre here at Chapel FM. My name's Vickie Orton, and I'm presenting a programme called Seeing Behind the Mask. And it's really a programme that's going to be challenging people's vision of what disability looks like, but also challenging the fact that many people with disabilities, including invisible disabilities, disabilities in the broadest spectrum, it sounds patronising to say capable of many things. That is not at all what I mean. But what it means is it's that sometimes, for example, I'm an artist and I know that my disability plays a huge part in my art that I produce. And that's not necessarily the case for other people, but that art can come from, well, I think your art usually does come from deep within. But, you know, what if having a disability gives you the confidence to do something that you otherwise might not have done? And certainly this is a thought that came to me when somebody was looking at my artwork and they said, and would you have done that if you hadn't had a disability? And I said, well, actually, in honesty, I may well have done art, but I wouldn't have had the confidence to put my art into exhibitions and things. And that's for a whole host of reasons. And so I'm really thrilled because I've got a wide range of guests that come from many different backgrounds. So first of all, I'm really pleased to have with me Anzir Boudou, and he has also brought Sam with him. So now Sam is very quiet, but he will be playing an important part in the interview. And I'm also very excited to have Miranda Are with me. And Miranda, would you mind by starting off and playing some music for us?
Absolutely. So lovely to be here. Thank you for having me, Vickie. I'm going to start with a song called Focus to Count. And yeah, like you say, it was about expressing my feelings when I was, well, for me, like going through emotional distress, being able to express the, you know, how that can sometimes be so crushing and incapacitating, and how mental health sometimes can feel that way for us as well. So, you know, most of my songs are written through that kind of lens of me needing to express something, because I'm a very emotional person, you know, so, and this is called Focus to Count.
Look what's been hid underneath, and now it's upturned. You got it all made. You said what you said, now it's my turn. I'm going at 500 miles an hour. Please don't put on the brakes. I'm going at 500 miles an hour. Please don't put on the brakes. With or without honesty, you got to focus to count properly. With or without honesty, you got to focus to count. Focus to count. Focus to count properly. Properly, yeah, properly, yo, properly. I guess in a way you're king for the day, but it was my shout.
Thank you very much, Miranda, and we'll be hearing more from Miranda later. Now, earlier in the week, I met with Jill Crawshaw, and Jill has set up a group for disabled artists in Leeds called Disrupt, and this is the conversation that we had. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to be here with Jill Crawshaw, and Jill is a woman of many talents who has organised exhibitions locally, including the Shoddy exhibition, which I think was a few years ago now, but it had huge impact and, rumbled on, for want of a better word, around West Yorkshire, including the debate as to where was Shoddy really invented. But anyway, Jill's here to talk to me today about a group that she's set up called Disrupt. So, Jill, would you mind telling me, what is Disrupt?
Okay, hi Vicky.
Hi.
Good to be here. Disrupt, and I can't just claim credit for me setting it up. Disrupt is a new group, it's a new collective of disabled artists in Leeds. It's really good and got loads of potential. It's already got around 30 members. These are artists, disabled artists, who are living and or working in Leeds, spending a lot of time in Leeds. So Disrupt, I'd had the idea for a while that maybe it would be a good idea to sort of have some sort of network or group of disabled artists in the city. Leeds, it's a funny place. There's loads going on. There always has been. But in terms of disability and disabled people's organisations, I don't know. We've sort of seemed to have been a bit on the fringes. There's been things that have happened, but there's never been, consistent disabled people's organisations through our history, I don't think. There's things have come and gone. And I just thought there was a need for something that was of and for disabled people, that was entirely of disabled artists and not anyone else. And what I was particularly keen on was this should be a group for people who identify as artists and who take art seriously, who take their artistic practice, as it's sometimes called, seriously. People who want to develop their work, who want to collaborate with others, and who are really dedicated to their art. So that's what Disrupt is. Yeah, it's a network. We've come together quite recently, and we're saying that, this is who we are. We're serious disabled artists, and we want to be taken seriously, and we want disabled artists to be recognised. Now, one of the things that, I have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about, I think in Leeds, there's loads of really great projects and organisations that are around participatory art. And there's great stuff, and that's really good. We like to see that. But the problem is, I think, a lot of times in the art, if you talk about disabled people and the arts, that a lot of people automatically think of those community arts projects and of those participatory projects, and they think about disabled people going to a centre and doing an activity together, and they're thinking in terms of, oh yes, this is good for people's health, it's good to combat loneliness, it's good for people's well-being, all of those things. Sometimes, people talk about art and disabled people and they immediately talk about it being therapeutic. Yeah. Now, all those things might be happening and, those are good, bad or indifferent, whatever they are. But what Disrupt is about is saying, no, we're not a group. We're not an arts and health group. Art might be good for your well-being. We're not disagreeing with that. But what we are is a group of dedicated disabled artists. We're not doing this for a hobby. We're not doing this for our well-being. We're doing it because we have to, because we're artists and we need to create art and we want to carry on doing that. And we've got something to say with our art. That's really important, that, it's a way of sharing disabled artists' view of the world, and that's really important. And we don't think there's enough, and I don't think there's enough recognition of that in the city. I think there's a lot of recognition for the community art stuff. Great. But there needs to be more recognition and just a bit more, prioritising of disabled artists as artists.
And when you're talking about disabled artists and disabilities, talking about disability in its broadest spectrum, so presumably you're including people that might have mental health problems, as well as physical disabilities, as well as invisible disabilities.
Indeed. I mean, I do use the term disabled people and disabled artists, and hopefully, people understand that that's a really good umbrella term as well, I think. I mean, where we're coming from with Disrupt is around the social model of disability, which people might have heard of and might not. The social model of disability is a way of thinking about disability that says that people are not disabled by their impairments or medical conditions, you might call them. People are disabled by barriers in society that stop them taking part in the things that everybody else can take part in. So those barriers are things like, built barriers, buildings that aren't accessible, but it's also about barriers in terms of information and communication, and barriers in people's attitudes and in how people treat disabled people and the expectations that people have around disabled people. And I think this applies to artists as well, that often, again, people think, oh, disabled artists, well done you, well done.
The Our Blessed syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, isn't this marvellous? And, we're really trying to turn that idea on its head and say, no, disabled artists, look at the work they're doing. It's fantastic, it's challenging, it's exciting, it's surprising. It's all of those
and
things.
It's independent art, whereas, like you said, there is a place for group art activities, but presumably the members, and I have to say I'm a member of Disrupt myself, and it's about the art that you create as an artist, rather than somebody saying to you, right, today we're going to all make a collage. So there is a place for that, but also, there are a lot of disabled people that are artists that, like you say, are working independently, are creating great art.
Yes.
Now, am I right in thinking that the Disrupt Manifesto is due to be launched soon? Can you tell me just a little bit about the manifesto and when it's going to be launched?
Yes. We're launching. We're launching that, and we'll have the beginnings of a website on the 7th of October. So, what we have, because we're this collective of artists, this collective of individuals who've come together, we just wanted something that really set out what we were thinking and what we stood for, and that's where we thought a manifesto would be quite a good thing to do. Our manifesto talks about some of the things we've been talking about now, really. It talks about why we need Disrupt, and that's, to try and do something about the fact that disabled artists are often overlooked or missed out from opportunities and commissions and things like that. We want to be challenging stereotypes. I've talked already about, we're not making art as a hobby or for therapy, and that's something that the manifesto is very strong on. And we're saying, that we're proud to be part of the disabled people's movement. We're proud to take that legacy forward of disabled artists making work. And I'm going to say, because it often comes up, do the artists in Disrupt have to make art that's about disability?
That's going to be one of the questions I was going to ask you.
that addresses disability? No, they don't. And some artists do make work that addresses that. And my interest, I should say I'm not an artist, I'm more of a curator and organiser, really. And that's my interest, is raising disability issues and using art to do that, because art's really useful in doing that. But in terms of Disrupt, no, it's this thing, members of Disrupt are making art about a whole range of things, not just issues relating to being a disabled person. Although what's important, I think, is that it's about disabled artists' view of the world.
Yeah.
So even if a disabled artist isn't making something that directly addresses disability, it's still their view of the world. So, there's different definitions of what disability art is, for example. You know, and I think nowadays that definition has broadened to include, you know, any work by disabled artists, because it just in some way will reflect disabled artists' own experiences. So so there's an element of you know, disability issues and disability subject matter in there somehow.
Yeah, and I think that's a conversation that if we had the time we could continue and probably fill a whole programme with. And thank you very much, Jill. And I say I'd love to have you back, and we can. There's lots more to discuss here, but thank you very much for telling us about Disrupt. And let's say we hope to hear from you again soon. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, in fact, Jill and I went on to chat about all sorts of things. And like I say, it'd be great if we could do another programme covering a lot of those topics. I then went on to interview somebody called Teresa Mack. And Teresa is also an artist, and she's part of Disrupt as well. And, well, as you'll hear when I'm chatting with Teresa, it's very interesting the way that she has developed her art practice. As her disability has progressed, she has adapted her art practice so that she can keep going with doing what she does and what she's actually trained to do. So let's hear from Teresa. Hi, I'm absolutely thrilled to be chatting to Teresa, and Elliot is a mixed media jewellery artist, and I must admit I've seen some of her work on the internet, and she creates the most amazing jewellery from all sorts of materials. But anyway, Teresa, you're also part of the Disrupt group. Jill Crawshaw was telling us earlier about the Disrupt group. And so I may as well plunge straight in here and say, do you feel that you would have been an artist if you didn't have a disability? Does your disability inform your artwork at all?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here. I think it depends very much in generally when people got their disability and also what their artistic background is. So I gained my disability during my life. I wasn't born with it. And I come from a family where my auntie is a painter, my dad did beautiful drawings, my mum does craft and things like that. So I did jewelry already when I was a child and different other arts. So for me, I'm a trained goldsmith, and I just didn't like the traditional jewelry making, and I developed the mixed media jewelry artist I am, where I do more sculptural jewelry, and I use glass and polymer clay and copper and all different things. So they don't really have anything to do with my disability because I trained decades before I became disabled.
So it sounds, by the sound of it, also you grew up immersed in art. So maybe I should be asking, which is going off tangent a little bit, but you know, if you hadn't been surrounded by art, would you have been an artist, or do you think it is in your DNA, for want of a better word?
Well, I think if my parents wouldn't have encouraged that as something that is like normal to do, and they also bought the materials, it would have been much more difficult, I believe. So it's probably a combination of both, is that it's in my DNA, people are artistic in my family, but also I was given the opportunity to develop that as a hobby first and then do an apprenticeship.
Yes, and I think you know you're right. You know, for a lot of people, having that encouragement really does help. Now, I've seen pictures of your jewelry, like I said, and it's absolutely beautiful. As an artist with a disability, do you feel that you have a responsibility to represent disability within your artwork?
Well, not within my artwork, but in my informed practice. So what I do, I changed how I work. I'm pretty much housebound. I work in my bed. So I shared with other jewelers and other artists my setup in my bed, for example. And because I work with a torch, so I work with fire, I talk a lot about safety and how you can still do that in your bed, because I don't want to express my disability or my needs, or we can all do things through my art. It's not art therapy what I'm doing, it's a skill I learned. But I want to teach people, just because you have chronic pain all of a sudden or something else happens, that shouldn't stop you from doing something that's meaningful.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, you are a serious artist, like you say, it isn't a hobby. So I guess you must be quite unusual in your work setup, but do you have a lot of opportunity to talk to other people with disabilities about the way that they could maybe manage? I mean, very few people have the luxury of a studio, and I know personally from working at the kitchen table how frustrating that can be, but to be having to do all of your work from your bed, and especially it sounds quite dangerous working with torches and things, but it obviously is possible. Do you um, do you have much of an opportunity to promote your work practice and to maybe encourage other artists that might be in the same situation as you are?
Well, I feel really blessed because I'm also a coach, a grief recovery specialist, and I'm starting a project very soon called Ending Social and Emotional Isolation for Chronic Disabled and Chronically Ill People. And I'm also a teacher, so I have taught other disabled jewelers. So I just use every opportunity I can find to tell people, look, the situation you find in yourself in, and especially if it affects your mental health, that's not the end of the road. So we can actually explore how can we use our circumstances and still have a meaningful life. So I share pictures. I wrote a blog about how to work in bed and how to change your practice. And I was surprised that people say then, oh my God, I never really thought of that. And actually people are contacting me now. I just had someone recently saying, I've got osteoarthritis in my hands. Can you please share how you do this and what we can do? And I feel there is a need of artists and people in general who struggle with disability and chronic illness, that they don't want just to give up and, oh, this is my life now, I can't do anything anymore. So we can do so much. We just need the right person to encourage us. And if you're properly trained and if you know the right tricks and tips, it can be so safe. And not everybody needs to use a torch. You can do other things.
Yeah. Well, um, oh, before we go, would you like to just give us details of your, did you say it was a blog or a vlog that you did?
Yeah, well, that blog was in a for there's like a jewelry association or so. So I wrote it for them. I don't even know where I would find that, but people can find me on Facebook. I have a mental health service blog, Your Beautiful Self, and it's called Helping You to Find Out Who You Really Are. And if they want to contact me under Teresa Mack as well in Leeds, that if anybody wants to reach out, has any questions, I'm really, really happy to share tips and tricks and encouraging words.
Well, thank you very much, Teresa. And it ties in perfectly with when we were discussing the Disrupt group, that there are serious artists out there with disabilities. It's not all group therapy. Not that there's anything wrong with that in its place, but I think what Teresa's describing is very helpful. I'm very hopeful because I'm sure there are quite a few people that suffer from chronic fatigue or are bedbound. But when your brain's still whirring away with all of these ideas, there are means to put those into practice. So thank you very much, Teresa.
Thank you very much for having me. Take care.
Thank you. I say it was a real pleasure talking to Teresa, and like I say, her jewellery is exquisite, and I think she also gave a lot of useful information that certainly I wasn't aware of. And so, you know, if there is anybody that is facing those challenges, then follow up some of the links that Teresa was talking about. And I am very envious of her work setup as well. It's all very organised, and like I say, and it's really positive, and that's what, you know, disability isn't all about, you know, poor me. In fact, there are very few people, I think, with disabilities who go around thinking, oh, woe is me. And that's what I want this programme to be about, you know, positivity. And so, talking of positivity, Miranda, would you be able to play us another song, please?
Don't you want a really depressing one?
Go on, bring the mood down. That's life, isn't it? You know, the sun shines, it goes down.
What
Yeah.
would you prefer? Would you prefer something quite high energy and intense, or would you prefer something a little bit more chill? What's everyone after? Ska. You want something ska? Anyone else?
Chill. Yeah, go for chill.
Quite gentle, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Gentle for me. This is gentle for me. This is called All Aboard, and I wrote it shortly after starting to study a book called A Course in Miracles. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, and it's you do a lesson every day for 365 days, and it doesn't aim to teach you the meaning of love, but it teaches you about removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence that we permanently live within. And it's really changed my life quite a lot, actually. And yeah, I wrote this shortly after starting to study it. I watch them shake the deal. It's below the belt, but over ground. Baby, what's become of me? We were taught by order, brought by fools. Then we're thrown it test by test. By pursuing chaos, we learn rules. How'd you expect me to do my best? By the grace of God, we are many, it's so very, but don't stop us now. Be merry, count your money on the overground. We are many, it's so very. We're the talk of the angels, talk of town. We're the lungs without a breath. We lay wreaths of stone upon our home. I wear one around my neck. We lay larger than the length and breadth of a coin without a man. And by giving forward and to mouth, I don't expect you to understand. By the grace of God, we are many. It's so very, but don't stop us now. Be merry, come to money on the overground. We are many. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Miranda, that was beautiful. I feel quite emotional after that. And I love the way that you can just suddenly say, oh, well, what do you want me to play? Because Miranda's come here. She hasn't got a playlist or anything like that. She's just, a true professional. I love the way you can switch out. But I'm really pleased because I have with me Anzir Boodoo, and he's brought Sam along with him, Samuel L. Foxton, who, Sam's not a stranger to talking to large groups of people. But first of all, like I say, I don't know how to introduce Anzir, because Anzir is a man of many talents, many skills, involved in a lot of things. You're part of the Leeds Disabled People's Organisation. You're on the committee there. But that's just one aspect of your life. Would you like to tell us a bit more, please?
So, I've sort of had a bit of a roundabout journey of things, I suppose. So, I do puppetry, obviously, which is what I'm here to talk about today, and I also make sculptural artworks with lighting, actually the lighting bit rather than the sculpture bit, but that's all about repurposing, reusing plastics and circular economy, circular design, and and I also kind of write songs and poems and stories and things like that, and I have a day job working for a climate change charity as well.
And can I just interrupt, because you were telling me earlier that you were involved in Town Planet, and what I hadn't realised that they were original rebels as well, which I know obviously you've done. It's not in your, I don't know how to say, in your past, but that you are certainly a person that doesn't still and likes to fight challenges. If that be fair to say?
Yes. I don't know whether it's born of like some weird combination of anxiety and the kind of like instability of like what you feel you can do that comes with having a variable condition like ME. But yeah, I kind of probably, yes, constantly on the move, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah, a born rebel.
I mean, I might like to think so. I don't know how true that is.
Would you, first of all, would you like to introduce Sam to us and maybe say a little bit more about your background with the puppetry and I'll leave you to.
Yeah, so I have Samuel L. Foxton with me, and he is the face of my work as an urbanist, so someone who kind of works around a multitude of issues around cities and their relationship to people and the environment. And I started working with Sam really as a response to kind of having a few very serious problems, I think, in my career, particularly when I had returned to academia and I was studying for a PhD, and really a lot of things that in a way boiled down to the ableism that's kind of very strong within the academic community, but it's very kind of it's silent. Nobody really talks about it, and a vast number of disabled students end up dropping out of their courses, whether that's undergraduate or postgraduate, despite support that may be available or may not work. So as someone with ME, I got dyslexia support. I'm not dyslexic, so that was interesting. But basically, it was this kind of collapse of confidence and everything, I suppose. I just wanted to kind of retreat and not be myself anymore, and wanted to express a lot of the things that I've been working on and studying over the years. And I guess that kind of that kind of mask of working behind a puppet was what I was exploring.
And you have taken Sam to planning conferences as well. Now, I'm the kind of person that talks to dogs, cats, boxers, small children, and there is something about Sam that makes me talk to Sam and look at Sam as opposed to looking at you. And I was wondering, first of all, what was the reaction when you took him to the conference with presumably people that were professional people that perhaps aren't used to talking to, small animals, children, puppets or anything. And then I was going to ask you as well, because I think that Sam has a very important role for people that find it hard either to make eye contact with people or will trust Sam in a way that they would find it hard to trust another person and will talk to Sam when they can't physically talk to another person. So that's two questions. So first of all, how do people react when they meet you, Sam?
It varies quite a lot. So it sort of varied from the kind of very intrigued and people who were kind of very engaged with Sam to I went to a planning seminar, and like town planners are kind of fairly conservative people despite the very radical origins of town planning, and who would kind of like see me kind of turn up at this thing in a suit with Sam in my arms and literally be kind of stepping away from me. I was at a Metro meeting where the chair had got kind of semi-abusive to him. But anyway, it varies. I think some people are willing to engage and to talk about things like how you can use someone like Sam to kind of explore issues in a different way and look at how you might approach something from a different perspective from what you would have ordinarily.
And am I right in thinking, I mean, obviously you are a trained puppeteer as well, and am I right in thinking that you have done work with predominantly children who, let's say, find it easier to engage with Sam than, like I say, than talk to adults?
So I've worked with a puppeteer doing children's shows for a few years. So that's been, not so much with Sam, but with other puppets and other stories. And the way that children engage with puppets, I mean, something we probably remember, having seen a puppet for the first time or watching puppets on TV or something like that, is very particular. And I think it's that we do often interact with puppets as their own beings, and with kind of eye contact and focus and things like that. And we're working on how we might use that in kind of I guess a context of, I don't know if training is the right word, but kind of trying to work out how we might help children with communication and expression when they find it very difficult to do those things of themselves. I've been having a few conversations with a professor at the University of Leeds who works on a number of things, but he's a neuroscientist and works with children with cerebral palsy, and we've been talking a bit about how the interaction between people and puppets could be kind of quite particular, and potentially working on some neuroscience research in that regard. to understand kind of what puppetry does to the brain, which I think would be very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I must admit, I'm a big fan of puppetry, and I do find myself drawn. I mean, Sam is sitting here very attentive, and I do find myself drawn to looking at Sam. Were you interested in puppetry, when you were growing up?
I think so the thing that I remember is sometime in the 80s there was a range of hand puppets called Fluppets that were very popular, and I always wanted one, and my parents were like, no, can't have one, not buying you one. And then I think I kind of had this thing in me for a while. I think when I was at university, I'd sort of gone out trying to find a hand puppet and then gave up, and it kind of really fell together after I'd kind of had this really, kind of literally depressing time of I've been studying in this area that I was kind of very passionate about, that I've always had an interest in cities, urbanism, transport in cities, and kind of like having come out of this PhD program, not really knowing what to do with my life, and it was kind of, well, I can't think of anything else, so whatever, give it a go. Because
certainly to me, Sam seems much more than a puppet. It's hard to explain to people, but Sam is, obviously you're very skilled, but he doesn't seem to be a part of you, and he has his own identity as well. And like I say, it'd be really nice if we could have a longer conversation, especially once you've started the research about, like I said, what it is about puppets and how it does affect the brain. And I must admit, I have a large collection of hand puppets as well. It's been lovely talking to you, and like I say, I'm sorry we can't talk much longer. But again, it would be great if we could have you back and maybe have a more in-depth conversation about Sam and his life and the work that he does. So thank you very much indeed, Anzir. And thank you, Sam, as well. Now, I'd like to move on to Miranda Arié. And Miranda, you are a singer and a songwriter, and you're also an award-winning mental health advocate. So, would you like to tell us how you got into music? I mean, obviously, music is a huge part in your life. Am I right in saying that? So, yeah. So, do you want to tell us first of all how you got into music, and do you find that you developed your musical skills in a response to, you don't mind me saying, but yeah, it's quite well known that you have had serious mental health problems when you were younger. And did you find that you came to music as a result of that, or was music something that was always in you? And presumably, was music your way of saying things that you couldn't say out loud? A bit like people will talk to Sam, but you can say things in music that you can't say every day.
Absolutely. Well, I would certainly say for a start, like, that music's always been in my blood. It's in the blood of, like, my brother and sister too. They're very musical. My mum was, very, very musical, classical pianist, and it's through the blood for sure. But on a deeper level, I got very, very, very poorly when I was younger. I ended up in an adolescent psychiatric unit for over 9 months when I was 14 years old, because I was just so poorly with my mental health. I was self-harming really badly, and just really not doing well at all. And it was in there that I first picked up a guitar, and it was a guitar with one string. That was just like,
guitar with one
yeah,
string.
it was like a throwaway toy in the corner. Luckily, it was the bottom A, so it was all right. It wasn't too painful on the ears. Well, not for me anyway. It's probably why they kept me in so long, actually. But yeah, so I even remember the first song I wrote on it, and I just really discovered this really beautiful way. I was like, oh my God, immediately it was addictive for me. Immediately, but positive addiction, you know. The fact that I was able to express how I was feeling, not through words, because I, you know, believe it or not, I'm a very bubbly, extroverted, loud, talkative person now. I was mute practically as a child. Like, I was too frightened to even like put my hand up to go to the toilet in school, so I'd wet myself in my chair. It was bad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Severe anxiety. Didn't talk to anyone, kind of thing. So it's been very liberating for me, this journey that I've been on with finding my voice, and music has been such a huge part of that for me. A huge part, because I haven't had to actually say to someone how I feel. I've been able to do it through music, which has led me to be able to vocalise my feelings very well now. And it's how I live, sharing how I feel and encouraging others to do the same, because I believe that if we don't express how we feel, it builds and grows. Our feelings won't go anywhere unless we express them. And it's in the process of expressing how we feel that we're able to process trauma, we're able to process those difficult emotions. So, you know, to talk that through is so important. And I'm an advocate for that, because I've seen how much it's completely transformed my life.
And when you were writing the songs, you know, when you first picked up the guitar with a single string, did you keep those songs to yourself, or did you share them? Because sometimes there's nothing worse than if you've written something that actually you don't want it to be analysed. It's just what I've written, it's come out of me, and it's there.
Yeah.
And did you keep it yourself, or did you share it with the health practitioners?
Yeah, well, back then I kept it to myself, actually. But this is, you know, there are two different levels of like writing or doing art or performance, writing a film, whatever you're doing in the creative field. There are levels within that where we are expressing how we feel. That's one level, and we're creating something. We're creating a piece, beautiful, processing our own emotions in that way. It steps up a gear when we share it. Completely steps up a gear when we're able to share it with other human beings or puppets, wherever we want to share this. You know, when we're able to sort of express how we feel to others and share our art with others, this is when the true magic happens. Because we are heard, we are seen, we are met, our feelings are validated. You know, that they're put out into the world, and I believe art is created to be put out. And it's actually very stifling, I think, for a lot of people. Some people might want to create art and just leave it in there. You know, they might want to paint a picture and leave it in their cupboard. That, you know, whatever. That's okay. You know, whatever works for you. But for some of us, and I'm one of these people, we need to share. You know, we all have a deep need within us as human beings for human connection. Vital, actually, I would say, completely vital for good mental health is for us to have connection with other human beings, 100%. And by us enabling ourselves, because there's a vulnerability with sharing our art, there's a huge vulnerability with sharing our art and music. And when we're able to be brave enough to share our feelings openly with others, this is where the magic of connection happens.
And how long did it take you to get that? Because you're right, it is a huge leap of faith when you put your artistic work out there. And especially if you're already, your self-confidence is quite fragile, and that fear of failure. So how long did it take you to know that actually I feel ready to share this?
Well, do you know, like when I went on a long journey with this. Like I joined a punk rock band when I was 16 years old, just as like a female vocalist, just running around on stage dressed as a fairy, and you know, like just going really, really well. I haven't really changed. I just dress as a more glamorous fairy nowadays. So you know, I started when I was very young. I ended up in complete. I had such severe performance anxiety. I don't even know how I kept going, actually. It was so intense. Like, and it just sounds crazy talking about it now. It's so terrified to perform. but having a deep calling within me that I know that's what I love to do, and bring it back to the love. I had to work through that performance anxiety, and now I might get like some healthy nerves. It's very healthy now.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was to a point where I couldn't sleep. I thought I was, literally doing a gig here, in fact, actually. I swear to God, like, maybe like 4 years ago, doing a sisterhood show, Sisterhood Music Collective, who I'm a part of. I was so terrified, I could not even, I couldn't play. I had to stop. It was just a gig here. It was so bad, my performance anxiety. I'm really proud of myself actually talking about it, because it's like where I've got to now, nothing. Because I've worked with those feelings on a really deep level. But what has really helped me more than anything is supporting other people. Now, this is, do you know, if we want to heal, what I strongly believe is if we want to heal from something, we need to give love to others for that thing. When we become of service to others, when we start serving others, so if I started serving others to build their confidence, and this is why I became a mental health coach, and it's what I do. I live to encourage others. You can do it. You're amazing. I love you. You're so good. I want you to share your voice. This is how I live my life, and I've become that kind of person, an encourager, a supporter, and my issues melted away without me even having to say those things to myself, because I was giving love to others, and it's that recognition that we are one. If to give and to receive are one in truth, and as we give, we receive that back.
And what you're saying makes an awful lot of sense, and I agree with what you're saying. If your 14-year-old self heard that advice, and I'm thinking at the moment there is a crisis of the mental health of our young people, and a lot of young people are struggling. And obviously you've been there, you know what it's like. How would your 14-year-old self have reacted to somebody saying, because we can, as adults, we can often say, it'll get better, it'll pass. Mm-hmm. But when you're that age, that's a lifetime away. And if you're actually so sunk into depression, for want of a better word, you can't see a way out. So, but, you have made a way out, and what you're saying makes sense. So how would you reach out to a 14-year-old who maybe at the moment just can't see a way out?
Well, first of all, like my 14-year-old self would have been very, resistant to those ideas. And we need to remind ourselves and other people that our pain is not us, and it doesn't define who we are. And that when we experience pain and suffering and, emotional struggles, that is not our identity. And what I mean by that is that we do not want to define ourselves by our past, because the suffering that we encounter, and this might be hard to believe, is it's never coming from the now. It's never coming from the now, in the present moment. It's always coming from something in the past. So when we start to recognize the pain as not our identity, it's our conditioned self, it's the parts of us that have experienced pain in the past, that have been conditioned in a certain way, just like a dog can be trained by a bell to salivate every time it hears a bell because it knows the food is coming. We get conditioned as human beings. It's a big flaw. It's a big flaw that we have. I mean, the world has evolved a lot faster than our brains could catch on. So we live in this world, and we do not want to be led by our conditioning, because our conditioning has taught us that situations are frightening, that love is frightening. We might get hurt, and we live with these barriers up, and we live with these defenses, and we live with this life where we go, this happened to me, so this is me as a person. But our true identity is peaceful presence, is love. And if we can, bring that in and make sure we're telling the young that they can separate from this, and to be the watcher of it, be the presence behind that pain, watch it for what it is, see it for what it is, because that's how we bring presence to past pain. We go, for me, I used to go around with this story in my head, so much trauma as a child, like traumatized me, the victim of this, and this happened when I was young, so this is why I am like I am. Yeah, and it can serve a purpose in a certain way to understand the way that we develop, but at the end of the day it goes, who am I now? I go, who am I now? And if I hear those stories coming up, so for example, if I got nervous or frightened to express how I feel because I'm scared of rejection, or, you know, rejection is a huge thing for everyone. People do not talk about this. But working in mental health, I hear the same story again and again and again. People are terrified of rejection, terrified of being alone. We're all scared of abandonment, all of us. It doesn't matter what you've been through. We're all healing from trauma, this mass separation, you know. And I need to tell myself sometimes, this is an old story. This is an anxious thought. This is not a fact. This is an old story. And then in that moment, we practice that separation. We see it for what it is. We shine a light on it, because who's doing the watching? Who's doing, you know, who's doing the saying of this is an old story? It's the comforter within us. And it's that comforting voice that we can trust, because that's our true self, not the pain. And then we see the duality that we have as human beings. We have our true self, we have our higher self, the voice of love, and we have the false ideas about ourselves, the ego, which is the voice of fear. We need to trust the voice of love. Always bring it back to the voice of love.
Yeah, those are, like I said, such strong words, and I know that you do go into secondary schools and you do talk to young people, and this is, I hate this when people say, "Oh, do you find it's made you stronger?" And I don't mean that, but do you feel that it has shaped the person that you are now because you've had those experiences? And I do mean shape in a positive way.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I really strongly believe, and people might have resistance to this idea if they're in deep suffering, but I strongly believe that we are given life situations so that we can be of service. I really believe that. And all the times in my life where I've experienced so much deep suffering, to the point where I didn't want to live, you know, where I tried to take my own life, I give thanks for that suffering actually now. I give thanks for being sectioned. I give thanks for the suffering that I encountered even 6 months ago with heartbreak, having my heart broken, that was so intense. And I give thanks for all those situations, because I go, okay, I'm only being given gifts. And I can bring it back to knowing that we can take our pain and make it into purpose. You're a living example of that. Do you know what I mean? You shine the light of that. You know, you're doing this show, it's empowering, but because of your own experiences that you've encountered, you would not be doing this if you hadn't suffered. You know, actually, that's a fact. When we have suffered so much, it gives us that. And like I said before, when we first started chatting, the way we truly heal is when we help others. Yeah. And we're all here with purpose. Every single one of us is here with purpose, whether we, like Teresa, you know, whether she can't get out of bed, she's delivering. She's being of service. She's sharing. She's shining her light. You know, she's supporting others who might not be able to get out of bed. How beautiful is that? You know, and yes, it's excruciating, the suffering she must be going through, and we can hold deep empathy for that, but what an absolute legend. Do you know what I mean? And we take that pain, we make it into purpose, and I am deeply grateful for all the emotional suffering I've been through, actually, and all the emotional suffering that's yet to come. Yeah. And we remember, when I am healed, I am not healed alone. When we focus on our own healing, this is how we start to support the healing of others, and this is how it spreads, and this is how we heal the world, do you know? Yeah,
well, it sounds cruel to cut you
off. No, not at all.
And the same with Anne. We could have chatted for a lot longer about these things, and, you know, and thank you for sharing that, because there is positivity there. And we know what it's like if you are stuck in that deep, dark well. Yeah. Hold on, and you know, songwriting might not be your thing, drawing might be your thing, writing might be your thing, doing mathematical complications, that might be your thing. You know, just hold on. Everybody's got got something. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Anzia and Sam, and I'd like to say a big thank you to Miranda and to Jill and Teresa as well. And we'll say thank you. And then Miranda, if you would play us out. So first of all, yes, a big thank you to my guests. And would you like to play us out?
Sure thing. Yeah, it's
Thank
such
you.
a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Vickie, for inviting me and just putting on, being of service like you do. You're just such an amazing,
It's
stalwart of
selfish,
the
actually, because I
community.
love it.
Well, this is it. This is it. And we start to love helping others. And this, it's a beautiful feeling. It's beautiful. It's why I work in mental health, I'm going to play a song, actually, that I wrote in lockdown. And I was dealing with so many people because I was working for the NHS. I still work a little bit for the NHS now. And people just in complete crisis, like you said, just suffering so much with their mental health, forced into separation, which, like I said, it's very, very harmful for mental health, is when we're in separation, and we've been forced into separation. I just wrote this because I was talking to so many lonely people, absolutely breaking my heart, and just about finding our voice and allowing people that space to share their voice about how they feel, and just being there. That I don't need to fix. And when people are suffering with their mental health, sometimes as human beings, someone comes to us and they talk about their mental health, and we feel the need to fix. Oh, how can I make this better? What can I do? Just be there. Do you know what I mean? Just sometimes we can just hold the space, and sharing that voice. And yeah, this is called Grown, and it's about, it's for everyone who's felt isolated throughout lockdown.
I'm paying per view, it's high on the news. To do as they say, but not as they do. Now I'm always home and I write television. Don't stop, it's my decision. Don't stop, it's my decision. No, don't tell the papers. Hey, I'm stuck on the shelf. Too bad I'll save myself. Ain't nobody else can save you. That's adult behavior. I'm rude by the way I sing. What it means to me don't mean anything. I don't need you to save me. What it means to me don't mean anything. What it means to me don't mean anything. Final episode, I don't know which to choose. I need an ad break, I'm sick on the news. And I'm always home and I write television. Don't stop, it's my decision. Don't stop, it's my decision. No, don't tell the papers. Hey, I'm sick of the shelf. Too bad I'll save myself. Ain't nobody else can save ya. That's adult behavior. I'm rude by the way I sing. What it means to me don't mean anything. I don't need you to save me. What it means to me don't mean anything. What it means to me don't mean anything. Ooh, I'm always wrong. I write television. Don't stop, it's my decision. Don't stop, it's my decision. No, don't tell the papers. Hey, I'm sick of the shelf. Too bad I'll save myself. Ain't nobody else can save ya. That's adult behavior. I'm rude. I am proud. always alone, and it's never enough when your series is done, but you can't switch it off.
Now I'm always alone, and it's never enough when your series is done, but you can't switch it off. Thank you. Thank you.